to welcome all of you all over the world. And as usual, please feel free to say hello via chat in your mother tongue and tell us where you are and from where you are listening. And I'm very much happy to welcome Dirk Rohde for this evening lecture. And Dirk Rohde has been for a long time a biology and chemistry teacher at Marburg Waldorf School. And I admire very much that while being a teacher, he has been able to do a habilitation at Marburg University. So he did it during the time he has been a teacher. And his topic has been about the German Abitur at Waldorf schools in comparison to normal schools. And it was a very fine research work which has been published last year. And also, I'm very much happy that he's a colleague at Alanus University. He's a professor at Alanus University with us. And today he's going to speak about the role of technology in Waldorf schools. It's often a question, how do Waldorf schools deal with technology? And this will be his topic today. I'm very much happy you are with us today, Dirk, and it's your word now.
Here we go. Highlight would have been if you would have said hello in Arabic, or I don't know, since Jos is in Morocco right now, so you really get jealous when you hear where he is right now. So first of all, a very warm welcome from my side to all of you. And what Jos said, I'm going to talk about technology tonight. Just a few remarks before I get into the topic. As you can see in the background, I'm sitting here in an office room, and this is not my private room. I'll come back to this later on. This is one office room of the Waldorf seminar in Kassel, where I just teach a course right now. And actually, it's Wilfried Sommer's office. And so this gives me a chance to have a stable internet, and that's why I chose this room, first of all. And what Jos said, the topic of today is technology, but I want to focus first of all on the title, and I chose the title Technology, a Forgotten Waldorf Subject ? So I should rather say Technology, a Forgotten Waldorf Subject, like this. And as you can see by the question mark, I'm not quite sure how much I know about this topic. And at the end, I prepared 3 questions to you, and I want to, at the end of this talk tonight, I want to discuss or I hope to get answers to these 3 questions from all of you, because I don't have an overview of Waldorf education, what's going on all over the world in regard to technology. So I just got some ideas, and I want to introduce you into these ideas. And so when you recall what we have heard so far in all the different talks we had here, we learned quite a bit about racism, colonialism, and social injustice. And the title of the series of lectures we are into this fall is Chances and Challenges of a Global Education. So we heard quite a bit about challenges and crises and how to deal with them. And so when you recall, since all of you are teachers, you know, of course, that when you go into education and educational science, all of you know what is meant with a didactic triangle. So on one side, there are the students. On the second, or one corner, are the students. Second corner are the subjects, the topics. And third corner are the teachers. And I prefer the term bridge, actually, because from my point of view, it's rather the task of a teacher to form a bridge. On one side are the students, on the other side are the topics, the contents. So the teacher tries to form a bridge and get the students into contact with the subjects or topics he teaches. And within this bridge, this was at least my impression. So far, we heard quite a bit about the students' side, what's going on the side of the students. And tonight, I want to rather focus on the other corner, on a specific subject, on the content side. So my focus will be more on the content side and also, of course, on the student side, but more, first of all, I want to focus on the content side. And when you think about the Waldorf curriculum, when we use today the term Waldorf curriculum, many people think, okay, there was a Waldorf curriculum 100 years ago, and this is still important for all the Waldorf schools worldwide today. We have heard quite a bit already that, of course, this is not true. There was a Waldorf curriculum 100 years ago, and today we observe, or we are into a process of changing many ideas of this original Waldorf curriculum. On the other side, we still relate to this very first Waldorf curriculum from the very first beginning, from 1919 till 1924, when Steiner was introducing and implementing all the different subjects in the Waldorf school. And one of these subjects, and this is my topic, my focus today, the subject I'm going to talk about, this subject was called technology. And the idea for this talk tonight started with, in a rather funny way, because early this year in January, I visited a nice, young, more or less tiny Waldorf school in Costa Rica, the first Waldorf school in Central America. And one morning we had a very nice talk together. We sat together, the colleagues. It's just a small school, so we all fitted in one room. All the colleagues and some parents and me talked about Waldorf education. All by a sudden, the father asked the question, what's going on with technology in Waldorf schools? So then I started to answer and said, well, technology meant in Waldorf schools a certain content and was set up as a subject and so on. And I started to talk about this subject. And after a while, I noted that the father expected a completely different answer. He expected something about what's going on in Waldorf schools regarding what? Computer, AI, IT, like whiteboards instead of blackboards and all that stuff. So what you could call the digitization today of society. That's the answer the father expected. And as all of you know, this is what Jos pointed out in the beginning. When you look in Waldorf primary schools, we try to avoid getting the students into contact with more or less, we try to exclude, so to say, this part of modern technology. We try to exclude it more or less. And later on in higher grades, of course, we try to get the students into contact with these modern technologies as well. But so Waldorf has a very specific way how to deal with modern technology from this point of view. But actually what was meant originally in the Waldorf curriculum, the idea of technology was much broader than what is meant with technology today. And this misunderstanding, or sort of misunderstanding what happened in Costa Rica in January to me, I think this can happen quite often to you when you get in contact, when you get into some sort of discussion with some people somewhere in universities or parents coming to your school, and then they ask these questions. What are you, how do you handle modern technology in your school? So first of all, I want to focus on technology in this much broader sense, like it was established in 1921 in the first Waldorf school in Stuttgart. And so just as a preliminary remark also, I did not prepare any slides because I will quote some sentences from Steiner, but more in a free way. And I thought it's not necessary for tonight to have the precise citations that you can read on your screen what I'm talking about. But I set up a list of literature with some notes. So Laura will share this list of literature. It's very short. It's just 8 topics on the list of literature. She will share it with you that you can read it later. And if you want to check some things, what I'm going to talk about tonight, and so you find precisely the hints where to find what I'm talking about now. So it's no problem to read it later on what Steiner said originally, but so I will stay to this more free way of citation, but we will have 2 votes. And especially I want to ask you at what I said already at the end, some questions. So referring to Kenya's talk, there was the first one in our series of lectures. You might remember that Kenya shared with us this sort of nice little story that she had a discussion with senior graduates from her school. And these senior graduates, they complained and they said, well, the school should pay her parents or their parents money back because when they went to their Waldorf school, they did not learn either not at all or at least not enough what they need to adjust themselves to the society they are now living in. So in a way, they said, well, in a Waldorf school, we lived sort of in a bubble. And we did not learn about our own history, about the history of other peoples in the society who live around us. And so now we are outside of school and we try to find our way in society. And we are confronted with the fact that we don't understand our own history and we don't understand the history of the people around us. So that was their complaint. And so first of all, Kenya went then in a different direction, but you can also say, well, when you think about it, they came up with a question, what do we have to teach in school? Or more precise, what and how do we teach in school? What's the task for us teachers? So in general, what do we say in general? We say, okay, we are supposed to teach our students in a way that they get in contact with the world, that they can engage themselves in the world. Then we add, of course, that they are not supposed to engage somehow, but they are supposed to engage themselves in the world in a fruitful, meaningful, individual way. So these are all terms we use to describe what are we supposed to do in our Waldorf schools. And as you can see there, we use the term or the concept world. And in many talks so far, speakers used this term world. But actually, you can think about what is meant with the term world. What do we mean when we say world? And then what I really like is each morning. So see, when you're, as all of you know, when I taught in high school, and actually I still do a little bit in high school, I teach always with chemistry and biology, I teach always in main lesson blocks. And so when I teach in a Waldorf school, I start at 8 o'clock in the morning and I start to recite the morning verse with the students. And as all of you know, this morning verse starts with, I look into the world. I look into the world. And then what are we talking about then? Or what do we say then? There are stars and the sun. And then there are stones and plants and animals and human beings. So that's what we say each morning. And now comes the important point. When you like when you look on my background here, what do you see? There's not a single stone, no plant, no animal, me as a human being. I can show you here, there's just right next to me, there's just on the desk here, there's one single plant and a little bit of soil. And maybe when I look, or when I check the soil, maybe I find a tiny little worm as an animal. But actually, what I'm surrounded here with is a man-made world. And when you look around where you are sitting right now, all the surroundings around you, what do you see? You see walls. Probably all of you are sitting in a building. Maybe some of you are sitting outside or in a car and using a cell phone. But mainly you see walls, you see windows, you see a little bit maybe rain or sunshine outside. But then you see your computer screen. You see everything around you is man-made. There's very little nature usually. And actually in many cities we have to go maybe even by car to go out in nature to see, to go into nature in the meaning of the morning verse, stones and plants and animals and so on. So this way, and this is what I really admire when I read Steiner. He already pointed out this fact 100 years ago, even more, a little more than 100 years ago in 1919. And at that time in Germany, the vast majority of people were still working on farms or somehow related to farm agriculture production and so on. And not that many people were living in cities. And Steiner already pointed out 100 years ago. So the challenge we all face today is that we are living in a man-made world. And now I want to coming to these two votes I talked about in the beginning. We will have two votes now. Please just think about when you look onto your screen now and you see the others, you listen to what I say, and you might see others, or you might see just when the video is switched off, then you might see just some lines, some names, and so on. You see and hear something, and what do you observe? You see a camera. You can observe, or you can note there must be a microphone, there must be a speaker, there's a screen, there's a laptop, and somehow what I say here in Wilfried's office room in Kassel, somehow it gets to you wherever you are, like in Africa or in the United States or in Australia or wherever you are. So there is a whole lot of technology going on exactly right now, and you are confronted with it exactly in this very moment. And now we have the first voting. And so please, Laura, now we are at the point. The first question is, and don't think about it too long, but the first question is, how much do you understand about what's going on technologically when we talk with each other via Zoom? And you see you have 5 possibilities to answer. We will just have a little vote, and instead of using the chat. Laura, do you have to explain something that with how to get into the Mentimeter?
Yeah, so in the left corner, I think people are already logging in. You have the QR code, and then you can just enter the code and then participate at the voting.
So we have the first colleague who already answered. Those of you who have problems to use the Mentimeter, maybe you just write a note into the chat, and Laura might be able to check the chat also, that we get an overview. But I think this is already a nice result. So how many votes do we have now? 25, almost 30 votes. So we have almost half of the participants voted on the Mentimeter, and then I see some are coming in via chat, and this seems to be more or less the same what we see on screen with the Mentimeter. So I cannot see any changes. So maybe Laura, we stop this right here. Okay, thanks a lot. And so far as I can see, and Laura, you might, I don't know, you might have found something different in the chat, but my impression is that your answers fit directly to what Steiner, on one hand, he assumed, on the other hand, he was sure that this will happen. We are living in a man-made world, and when we focus on precise questions, like this Zoom meeting here, we get the result. I'm really happy that at least one of the participants, of the colleagues right now, chose the option number 1, so that he or she knows most of it. Maybe a physics teacher or something, but the vast majority is around between hardly anything and just the basics and half. So on the right side. And so we are living in a world, and we don't understand that much actually. How does this world work? What's going on around us? And now we are coming directly to the second vote, and you can read on the screen again the question. So the first question was, what do you know? Second question is, how do you feel about your understanding of the technological background when you talk with others via Zoom? And I chose these 5 emojis. And yes, here we are. So it seems to stop again. And so it's pretty clear. We have the majority is 15 votes on quite well, or quite nice. 10 are half and half. And 1 feels very comfortable. And 1 does not feel comfortable at all. And maybe Laura, you can add, thanks. I think then we are done with this vote. And Laura, maybe you can add something. Did you check anything in the chat which adds something, some new points to these 2 votes?
Only for the first vote, it was mostly hardly anything or just the basics. And
Yeah.
I think for the second, most of them participated on the website.
Yeah. Okay. So now I come to what Steiner said about this fact. This was his, first of all, this was what he predicted? We don't know that much. And second, how do we feel about it? And so he gave actually 2 examples. And you can find this in the list of literature, which Laura will share with you. First example is observing people going into a factory. That was 100 years ago. Today, you will probably only be able to stand in front of a factory. It's very difficult to get into a factory anymore. 100 years ago, it was easy to get into factories. So he said, well, he observed people going in and coming out of a factory and just visiting the factory. So not the workers, but people who had just some little things to do in the factory, or just maybe looking around and coming out again. And just try to imagine yourself standing in front of a factory. On one side, raw products going into this factory. On the other side, ready products coming out, like a nice car, for example, or something. When you're standing in front of such a factory. And Steiner said, well, when these people are, these people would note how they feel about it, that they don't understand what's going on and going on in the factory, they would know that they feel a little bit uncomfortable. And his second example was exactly about the same. He said, well, when you use a streetcar. Today, you would rather say, well, when you drive with your car, you go by plane, you go by subway. You take a subway and you travel from one station to another station in a city. And you observe the people, or you observe your own feelings. You should be able to observe when you don't understand what's going on in the subway. Why does it move? How does the electrical engine work? Why do the wheels turn and so on? Why do the doors open and close? And how does it all work? Then, first of all, you should note when you don't understand it more or less, then you should know that you feel a little bit uncomfortable. And what are you going to do then? You start feeling uncomfortable, but usually it stays unconscious. And next step is then people try to neglect that they feel uncomfortable. They sort of try to forget that they don't understand what's going on in the man-made world. And then third step is they tend to, in German, it's called betäuben. I looked up, it seems to be a good translation to say stupefaction or numbness. It's a little bit like when you go to a dentist and the dentist takes a syringe and you get a little injection and you don't feel your tooth anymore. He is going to, or she is going to work on when you're sitting on the chair. So it's this tendency, you will develop a tendency not to note that you observe yourself and you see, okay, well, I don't really understand what's going on around me. I'm living in a man-made world and I don't really understand it. So now we come to the point, what was Steiner's answer and Steiner's suggestions how to solve this problem in a school pedagogically? First of all, I want to relate to Jost's talk, and you might remember he said, well, he visited a conference in Chicago, and he used the example of Coca-Cola, and he said, well, when you drink a Coke, then you drink or see something which is the very same all over the world. And he used this example to get to the point that we human beings, we are all individual beings. But when you look onto the technological side of the man-made world, you will note that our computers here, the planes, the cars, they more or less work all the same all over the world. See, this is a sort of a polarity. On one hand, we have more and more very individual human beings. On the other side, we are living worldwide in a man-made world which is not that much different. you can sense that you get a little bit disappointed. You travel to a far distant country, you visit for the first time in your life, you visit a new city, and you see, well, you see everywhere again Coke, and you see McDonald's and Zara and so on, all these shops and so on. So actually it's more or less everywhere the same. And this gives us the chance in Waldorf education to use this approach to this sort of problem, you could say, or Steiner calls this a main cause of social crises worldwide, that we don't understand enough about what's going on around technologically. We can use and we can exchange our experiences, how we deal in Waldorf schools. This is much more like the German approach would fit much better to all the countries worldwide than when you compare to what like Martin and Michael and so on are talking about when you look at history, for example. This is completely different. But when you talk about technology, this is much more common all over the world. And so now I want to get a little bit deeper into educational aspects. Like you might remember that Christoph talked about a little research going on with students, that students were asked in school, how do they feel about how their teachers perform, how their teachers teach them what's going on in their classes. And Christoph distinguished between answers of primary school students and then grades like 6, 7, 8, 9, and then high school students. And this, to distinguish between the different grades is quite important. That's something Steiner pointed out, that we are all very familiar with the 7-year sort of cycles of the kindergarten time, and then the class teacher time next 7 years, and then the high school time and early university time, third 7 years. But what is not that well known is that Steiner also pointed out, okay, the whole development goes sometimes slower, sometimes faster. In each third year, you can observe a little sort of a bigger step of development of the students. And after the first 3 years in grade 3, this is well known to all of us. This is called what we call Rubicon. And so this happens in about grade 3. What is less well known already is that there's another step in grade 6, which Steiner calls the first sign of understanding of causality of the students. And then the third step, and this is, from as far as I know, least known worldwide in Waldorf schools, there's the third step, and this is called by Steiner from knowing to understanding, from grade 9 to 10. There's another important step in the understanding of the students of the world, of what's going on around them, from 9 to 10. And these 3 years, 3-year steps, they relate exactly to what other educators also say, like a Montessori pedagogics and free schools and so on. They all use these 3-year cycles in the development of the students. So what are we going to do now in Waldorf education? What did Steiner say? Well, grade 3, when you look on the curriculum, what Steiner encouraged the class teachers to teach handcrafts, and then build little houses with the students. And then they have this very nice project, what I always call from grain to bread. First of all, plowing a little piece of land and then sowing seeds and taking care of the crops in fall, then harvesting and baking bread out of the harvested grains. So you see there's an important step of development in grade 3, and we accompany it with sort of an impact of you could say a practical impact, which you also could call a technological impact. When you look at grade 5, 6 about that time, you see the very same. This time we introduce new subjects like gardening, woodwork, metalworks, and so on. This is again a practical part, and on the other hand also this relates to technological aspects in the society. And then and now we come to the subject technology. This was introduced by Steiner in 1921 when the first grade 10 came up in the very first Waldorf school. So they started with 8 grades in 1919, 1920, first time grade 9, 1921, first time grade 10. And when the very first time grade 10 came up, he introduced not something more practical or so, but he introduced a completely new subject, which so far as I can see is unique for Waldorf education. I have never found it in other forms of education exactly in this way, as an own subject for grades 10 to 12 for the last 3 years in high school. And when he introduced this subject, he also said, well, before, I have to go back a little bit, one step back. Before he introduced the subject in grade 10, when you know later, from the point of view of today, when you know that there is this introduction in grade 10, and you look on the Waldorf curriculum, then you can see that he already prepared the introduction of technology in grade 10, in grade 7, 8, 9. Because when you look on the curriculum of biology grade 7, chemistry grade 8, and physics grade 9, you find exactly the preparation which is needed to come to the step to introduce a new subject in grade 10. And what were the contents of technology in grade 10? There was, first of all, spinning, so how to produce a yarn or thread. Then weaving, how to produce a piece of garment out of a thread. And technical mechanics, what is the significance of a screw? What is the difference between a nail and a screw? Then he introduced, he suggested for grade 10, landscape survey. Grade 11, he suggested to go into water power, how to use water power, hydroelectric power plants, production of paper, bookbinding. Those were the topics in grade 11. In grade 12, he suggested chemical technology like colors and dyes. Just when you think about, I mean, what an idea to talk in grade 12 about dyes. Like when you think about indigo, blue jeans were developed and they started to sell blue jeans in the 19th century. And the dyes, all of you know blue jeans. It's a worldwide sold product today. And blue jeans were colored with indigo, but they used at that time natural plants. And around 1900, or in the late 1900s, the first scientists started to find ways, to search for ways how to produce artificial indigo. And that changed the whole society so much. And in 1923 to suggest teach colors, dyes in grade 12, that's just a fantastic idea. So that was the starting point in the first Waldorf school. And now, where did we get today? From my point of view, when I look at our today's situation, my impression is, and that's what I want to discuss with you, because mainly my impressions are from Germany. And then, of course, when I travel around, I get some impressions from all over the world. But when I look here, especially on the German Waldorf situation, from my point of view, this subject technology has undergone a very interesting form of development. Very, very interesting. Because usually when you follow a subject like biology, which I had to teach for so many years, you see what Steiner suggested, and then you see how it gradually changed. New inventions were, which scientists made, were taken up in this subject on one side. On the other side, some things which were not that relevant anymore for the students, they were giving up. So there was a gradual change all over the years in the subject of biology. And this is true for many other subjects. Some subjects were given up completely, like since many years, stenography is not taught at all in Waldorf schools, for example, anymore. And so what about technology? From my point of view, this subject has sort of fallen apart. I would like to call this a process of falling apart. What, as far as I can see, what is still stable, what stayed from the very beginning, this is how we teach biology grade 7, chemistry grade 8, physics grade 9. This is the ideas which are there in these three subjects, 7 and grades 7, 8, 9. These are very stable, a sort of a very stable fundament to our Waldorf teaching today. Technology as an own subject in high school has, as far as I see, more or less vanished. It's gone as an own subject. But when you have a look on the content, like especially landscape survey, I've seen so much interesting approaches to landscape survey. It has become more or less a part of mathematics meanwhile. And there are many math teachers all over the world who are really intensely doing landscape survey. They, as far as I can see, they really love to do it, love to go on field trips and doing interesting landscape survey with their students. And this has become quite sophisticated so far. Spinning, weaving, water power more or less vanished. And what is most interesting from my point of view is that new ideas have come up, but they are not related to an own subject anymore, but sort of it is like as if the development of society knocks on our doors, on our school doors, and says, well, we need to come inside. And as all of you know, of course, we need to introduce somehow what AI and how to use it, what's the idea of a computer and how to use it and so on. That's one thing. But I want to point out sort of what really happens from my point, or happened and also happens from my point of view, is that this is not an approach of the Waldorf education. It's even not an approach of single schools. It's often due to the initiative of single teachers. Everywhere, I found so many single teachers, very interesting, and they are excited about specific topics, and then they start to go on their own to say, well, I want to introduce this or this topic in my school, and I go for it, and I see what I can get out of it. And I want to give you some examples. First of all, I want to recall that you might remember Virashni. She said, and this is the first, I was really excited when I heard from her that in her school, that's what she said, farming and gardening in her school goes all the way up to grade 12. And I bet that this is not by conscious, that this relates to the ideas from Steiner to technology 100 years ago, but it is a part of technology. Also what Steiner suggested, how to understand how we feed ourselves, and farming and gardening all the way up to the grade 12. This is, for example, also here where I'm in Kassel. Kassel Waldorf School also teaches gardening, or especially farming, also in grade 12. This is quite unique for German Waldorf schools, but it happens. In some schools, it happens. And this is, from my point of view, exciting and very important, that we don't give up on this. In just the opposite, we go for it and try to find, to introduce new ideas in our teaching, use all sorts of freedom we have to teach our students in a way that they can better relate to the world, the man-made world around them. So example 2, we have quite a number of schools in Germany which introduced in grade 12 in geography what they call a main lesson block about globalization. It's not only about racism and colonialism and social injustice. It's just a question of what happens to all societies worldwide when we try to exchange products by modern trading all over the world, raw products and ready-made products and so on, complete products and all this trafficking going on all over the world and so on. And all of you know, of course, the climate crisis and all that. So there are quite a number of schools which introduced this as a complete new main lesson block, geography grade 12, new approach. Third, we have also quite a number of interesting approaches how to introduce computer science or digital science, however you would like to call it. And some colleagues started to find a way to work, first of all, with very simple devices, physical devices, and then they construct with students sort of mimicking a very simple computer that they just they have some light bulbs on them on a table, and then they press a button, and then the one light bulb lights up and the other one goes off, and so on. And so by this, they try to get to an understanding for the students what is meant with what is meant with on and off, yes and no, what is meant with digits and so on. So very simple approach, but then we go in some Waldorf schools, we go very far how to with computer science, how to to set up a new program, for example, and to work with modern software and so on. And in Germany, we are that far that we have even now a professor, his name is Edwin Hübner, and he is specialized on digitization questions. He is a professor in Stuttgart at Waldorf University Stuttgart, and he travels around and he teaches all sorts of interesting approaches how to introduce these new techniques to students in Waldorf schools. He got quite far in that. And then last example from other schools, here in Kassel where I'm now, we have this school was, as far as I know, one of the first ones. They offer even or they call it dual or dual, I don't know the precise English pronunciation, way to get a high school degree. So the students here don't get only a high school degree, but at the same time they render an apprenticeship, some of them, and after 14 years, they then have a complete degree for a certain profession, and they have a high school degree. So very practical approach. And last point for this is that in the western part of Germany, some high schools implemented a way to get a high school degree via they introduced very sophisticated 1-year projects for 12th graders. These 12th graders work on very practical projects for a whole year. And this was, now they got it recognized by the state government in Western Germany. that this is a part of a certain type of a high school degree now, and with this degree they can enter university later on. So these are examples about what's going on in relation to technology in general in Germany. And I want to, at the end, I want to give you some examples from my own teaching and what did I do myself. See, I took over the responsibility of organizing the annual meeting of the Waldorf chemistry teachers in 1999, and I organized this for many years. And what we did was, as chemistry teachers, we meet always once a year in fall, but we don't meet always at the same in the same city or the same school. We travel around. So each year, another colleague invites the whole group of Waldorf chemistry teachers to come to his or her school, and then we organize field trips to either factories or like mining and so on, coal mining, for example. Next year, coal mining will be a topic. We will travel to Eastern Germany, where there's huge coal mining going on. So this colleague who stays in this school, he invites us, and then he or she organizes a field trip, and we have a chance to go into the coal mining or into the salt mining or into a factory which produces, for example, plastic products, for example. So we visit the factories and mining areas, and we get it's hard to just to talk about it. But when you've seen, for me, it was the first time in my life that I had a chance to visit a factory where aluminum is produced out of a mineral, which is called bauxite, and with a very high energy. And then you see on the floor, it's in sort of little basins. You look down onto the floor, and then you see liquid aluminum. It's just fantastic. Since I saw this for my first time, I got the impression that, yeah, I have a completely new sort of relation to aluminum around me. So this is one example what I did. And then another example is like from grain to bread, I introduced in grade 11 in sort of a topic, so to say, from iron ore to a product like a knife or a spoon. And because in the area here where I teach, close to Marburg, already in ancient times, iron ore was melted and used to produce iron. And out of iron, many technical instruments were formed, and many things which are or were and still are needed by the people. And so here, close to Marburg, there's a factory, and I went there often with my students, 11th graders. I went there with my students. And so it's great when you go into such a factory and you see it. I did this, of course, always around the time of Michaelmas, when you see a huge kettle, so to say, and there is liquid iron, or actually it's steel. I don't want to go into all the details now, but when you see liquid steel with a temperature more than 1500 degrees, and there's one single person, usually man, and he has a sort of it looks a little bit like a spear. Actually, it's a long tube, and he goes with the tube into the boiling steel and presses pure oxygen into it, and then huge bubbles come up. That's fantastic when you see this, especially around Michaelmas. It fits so much to this time of the year, and it's so impressive when you see it. So this is what I did in grade 11. And also I also did also little projects like How does a solar cell work, for example, instead of hydroelectric power? Here in Germany, solar cells are much more, have become much more important now. How does a solar cell work? How many solar cell panels do we need to produce the electricity which is needed for our whole school? Another example. Then I had a little project we rented an electric car for a year, actually for nothing. We got it from a car company. And so then we checked how much electricity how does an electric car work? How much electricity is needed for an electric car? How much energy does one solar cell panel produce? And so how many solar cell panels do we need in our school to get at least this one car running for this specific school? And so this what we calculated this. And so I did many projects like this. And before I will talk a little bit more in details about the last project I invented, I introduce, I want to point out something, and I think Steiner is completely right at this point. Because Steiner's argument is, why do we have to teach technology in school at the age of between about 14, 15 and about 18, 19, 20? And he says, well, when you of course, you cannot understand the whole man-made world, but when you find some examples, good examples, to teach the students how to understand at least the basics of the man-made world around them, then this understanding will become a personal part of themselves. A personal part will become inherent for them. Whereas when you wait, and when you say, well, you can look it up at Wikipedia or wherever later on as a student, when a human being becomes older than 20, 21 years, of course, all of us, we can look up how does a plane engine work, for example. But this becomes more superficial knowledge. That's Steiner's argument. Make sure that the students don't only learn some knowledge for a high school degree. Make sure that they learn technological aspects of the man-made world, that they get familiar with it from a personal point of view and not just from a sort of outside of them, sort of a superficial knowledge, which they can then learn by themselves later on. So the last example I want to share with you is I want to introduce you or to let you know a little bit about, from my point of view, a very interesting, tiny little island. Probably most of you have never heard of it. It's called Nauru, Nauru. It's also in the list of literature, the literature I refer to right now. This is a tiny, tiny little island. The size is 20 square kilometers. And this is just tiny. 20 square kilometers has a size of 4 by 5 kilometers. Or if you use miles, it's just, what is it then? 2.7 miles times 3 miles or something like this. Tiny. And then where is it? It's out in the Pacific Ocean, far away from everything. It's only surrounded by some islands like Kiribati and so on, and Marshall Islands and these tiny islands. The next larger places or islands is New Guinea. It's more than 2,000 kilometers away. Brisbane in Australia is 3,500 kilometers away. It takes several days to travel by boat from this tiny island to a different island, to a neighboring island. Very interesting. And this tiny island sort of lost in the middle of nowhere. It's very close to the equator. Lost in the middle of nowhere shows all traits, actually. You can teach everything, all traits of modern civilization, it's like the whole earth, all the challenges and chances, crises, everything, what's going on all over the world, goes exactly on this very tiny island. And it has become famous because there you find the best phosphate. It's a fertilizer. Each human being needs phosphate to move, for bones and teeth, and also for the DNA, for the heritage material. Each living being, and okay, of course, if you have no bones and teeth like a bacteria, you only need it for moving and DNA. And this is the place. It's an island which has a very pure phosphate, and phosphate is very expensive, and it's needed as a fertilizer worldwide. So the whole island has been exploited during the last 100 years, and it has been colonized actually in the late 19th century by the Germans and by the British and by the New Zealanders and the Australians. And then it has become independent around 1960. And it's the third tiniest country of the world. We have about 200 countries in the world. The tiniest is the Vatican in Rome in Italy. Second tiniest is Monaco, very tiny country in France. Third tiniest is Nauru in the Pacific Ocean. But as an independent country, you can, of course, just do everything politically. I don't want to go into all the details, but what you can see is that it exactly the same happened on Nauru like it happened to the world in the 20th century. So you can see it like a little tiny example, but with sort of investigating this example, you can relate to all challenges and crises. Like the Nauru people, only a few thousand people, they have been in the 1970s the richest people on the whole planet. They have become, these few thousand people, they have become so rich, incredibly rich, even richer than the Arabics with their oil products. And only about 15 years later, they have been the poorest people, or one of the poorest people in the world. So we had to send money and all sorts of products to Nauru to keep the few thousand people alive. And just by this example, it is you can relate the subject of technology also to all other subjects. And I think this is a purpose, especially for grade 12, to look back, what did the students learn in their whole school time, and to come to an overview. This is sort of, for me, always the challenge in all subjects in grade 12, come to an overview. What did we learn in school time, and where are we going to next? And with this example, you can relate a technological example, not only to science subjects, but also to politics, to history, to languages, to geography, geology, mathematics, all the calculations. There's not a single subject you cannot relate to this example. And this gives you a chance, if you have a big group, like I had always the chance in grade 12 to teach a big group of students, 3 lessons a week. And I used this example for half a year, and each student was able to relate to a specific perspective to this, to all the challenges of this little island. Because the little island is always a little bit like in the Pacific Ocean, like the world is sort of one single world in the cosmic, in space, in a way lost, but on the other hand, unique and with a whole lot of chances and challenges. Okay, I wanted to come my presentation up to this point, and I would like to end with 3 questions or would like to come now to the three questions I said I announced in the beginning. But I want to stop here first. If there are some questions or comments or something going on in you right now, I would like to give you the chance to say or to comment something before. But I would love to ask you these three questions to get myself a broader understanding of what is going on in regard to this specific, very unique subject of Waldorf education all over the world. Because this is a unique chance to ask so many colleagues these three questions. I would love to use them. Yeah, thanks for joining us so far up to this point. And now I just stop for a few seconds and wait for your comments and questions. Thank you.
Dirk, thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it. As usual, I'm enjoying everything. My question regarding the approach for Waldorf regarding a student is not connected to a curriculum or something introduced in the main lesson. What I noticed, my experience as a mom, usually the focus on the student, that he is not connected. And to be honest, with my experience with the mainstream, the public schools, it's not a student thing, it's a teacher thing. So if my student is not connected, what do I need to do to make my student engage, engage, and interactive with the materials? So I would appreciate if you point out what is the pedagogy, what is wisdom behind looking at the student as a reason of not performing in the classroom when he's disconnected or when he is, in general, not achieving.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking this question, because this relates on one side to the topic I was talking about, because I always use Steiner's hints, and I found them always very rewarding and helpful. So Steiner's hints in this case are like, first of all, is it an individual case? Is it just one single student? Then, of course, I could say nothing, because then you have to ask your colleagues to, first of all, you have to exchange your observations with your colleagues, ask them for their advice. If it is a single problem, if it is a class problem or a larger problem, and it relates more to the teaching, then Steiner gives two hints. One of is, be aware that even like when you teach for whatever, like grade 5, in grade 5, some students are in their development rather than in grade 3 than in grade 5. Others are already far further advanced, like in grade 7 already, and so on. So you have to make sure you just wait and make sure that you don't lose the latecomers, so to say. And second hint is, that was what I was talking about. His approach is, if they sit in class and have to learn more in a cognitive way, just let them do something with their hands. And like knitting and eurythmy and sports and so on, let them move, use their fingers, their hands, their toes, their feet and so on. And that this will get them more in relationship to what's going on in school. Yeah. So these are Steiner's hints, and I always find them very useful.
Okay.
Yeah. Are there more questions so far? Or comments? If not, then Laura, then we can share the three questions I would like to ask. Or Laura, do you want me to? So Laura gives these 3 questions in the chat. So my first question to all of you is technology, so what I said, in Germany, technology as a specific subject for grade 10 to 12, as far as I can see, is almost gone in German Waldorf schools. But I would like to learn from you, is this impression true? So my first question is technology still a subject of the Waldorf curriculum of your school? So maybe just let me know, are there any schools anywhere in the world where technology as a subject is still taught? Obviously not. Siva, there's a hands up. Just go ahead and.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we did have a subject as part of the physics main lesson, which was transport and communication. And then there is surveying, and we did have a block on biology, how technology is part of life sciences.
Yeah.
For grades 10, 11, and 12 children. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's something like that we are creating and trying to bring in the way of Waldorf as much as possible, and not really do a lot of heavy things, but rather bring it through experience. So we did it like transport and communication was like, we did it twice for 2 different batches, and block with life sciences, it was still in the process. And yeah, it is we did for 1 batch, and then we are trying to improvise it and make it better for the next.
And this was because physics grade 9, the original topic was transport and communication. So precisely telephone and locomotive.
Yeah.
And
we tried to extend it to the Bluetooth technology. I was not the teacher. I was the class teacher for the batch for which this was delivered. So I was working with the physics teacher, and we were planning things. So we started with the steam engines, and then we moved on to Bluetooth. So
right. Because see, I ask you 3 questions, but actually it's a little bit artificial. It's actually it's 1 question, because the first question is technology still a subject of the Waldorf curriculum in your school of your school? Second question, are there still leftovers of technology within the curriculum of your school, like landscape survey? And third question is, can you please share experiences you and or your colleagues with experimental new approaches to aspects of technology? These are my 3 questions. And like Siva, your answer sort of touched all 3 questions at once. So if some of you can share interesting experiences like Siva just did, just let us know, because it's so important that we encourage each other what's going on. And this is a nice idea to extend what's in the curriculum for physics grade 9, to extend it in grade 10 and so on. Yeah, Daniel, you want to say something? Or it's in the chat, so this is not a particular...
I can say something.
Oh yeah, great, go ahead.
Because I'm a teacher in Sweden, and in Sweden we have a subject. It's a state mandate subject, so it's not particularly Waldorf subject. It's called technology for grades 7 to 9, and the aim of this subject is at least to some parts related to what you have been talking about here.
Great.
That is to teach the students how to understand how we have these plugs in the wall, and out of them we have electricity. How does it get there?
Right.
You have to understand what's going on the way from the water power plants or the nuclear power plants or the wind turbines, and then how that makes your light bulb light up or your computer to work. So we have a state mandated subject.
Great.
In Sweden, grades 7 to 9.
So this is true then for all schools, more or less.
Yes, you have to have this subject.
So Sweden is in many aspects always a little bit advanced. I just love you about also also the fundings of the Waldorf schools and so on. So very many nice things about Sweden. But exactly like this is, I did this often. So often that just there's electricity and how does it get to this plug in the wall, or you open the water tap, why does the water come out there, where does it stem from, and and how come, and so on. Just a very nice approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
More
Dirk,
ideas?
yes.
Aida.
Hi, how are you? From Oakland, California. In a number of public and private Waldorf schools in the US, and Liz will be able to say more to this, but also at community school, we offered digital citizenship. And that is actually very powerful, very well received, and especially now, you can imagine, really recognized also by families and community as key. And it's a series of units from 6th to 8th grade typically, and it's done with a partner, Civics, but it's very much at the intersection of technology and Waldorf educational priorities.
Yeah. Thanks. Very encouraging. So we had Sweden, and we had Oakland now. Yeah, more. If I don't know if there are no more comments, I have also prepared something for the end. So if there are some minutes left, if there are no comments and questions or remarks.
Some remarks, Dirk, in the chat. Yeah. Some remarks. Maybe you can check them.
In the chat. Yeah, I check.
By Daniel, it's about Sweden. And by Vesco, it's about Bulgaria. Maybe you will.
Vesco is here. Yeah. In Bulgaria. So I can read it off. In Bulgaria, thanks, Vesco. Yeah. I'm really sorry. I cannot change here for whatever reasons. And so far it worked always that I can see all of you. Now I only see the speaker always. And so Vesco, I cannot see you, but I will read what you wrote in the chat. In Bulgaria, we have a subject technology and entrepreneurship, and also came from state curriculum in grades 8 to 10. My microphone is not working, so you will not hear me. So yeah, sorry for that. Thanks for sharing. Okay, and so as far as I can see, this means that the state curriculum already relates to what was originally just in the Waldorf curriculum. And this is what quite often happens, that within the last 100 years, the states took up many Waldorf ideas meanwhile, and from other school forms as well. So, as a math teacher, Daniel, also as a math teacher, I still love teaching land survey. Yeah. And the students usually love it as well. And I go just with you. This is a great this land survey is always a great trip. And not only the teachers, the students, they all love it and they come back excited and so on. Yeah, it fits so nicely. Usually, do you do it in grade 10 also, Daniel?
Yes, I do it in grade 10.
Yeah.
And the students come back years later. And when talking about school, they were, and the land survey weeks, those were fantastic.
Yeah.
Those were the best weeks in school.
Yeah,
as a math teacher, it's amazing to still be able to teach it.
Joan also writes here in the chat, I also still teach land surveying and love it. Yeah, in grade 10. Also our students love it. Yeah, that's great. So then maybe we can end with a little comment from my side. I don't want to shortcut your comments and questions, but what I think, since there are 5 minutes left, I want to use the chance to relate to Sven's lecture about sexes. And you might recall that he talked quite a bit about how to teach sexuality and all that, and men and women and so on. And as far as so what I read so far from Steiner, and during the years I read many of his lectures in relation to pedagogy. There is just one single lecture which I find really interesting. It's also in the list of literature. I took it up there. It's GA 302, and this is from 1921. And with the land, I just relate to the land survey now. He suggests for grade 10, regarding land survey, he says, well, land survey, when you teach this, the boys should do the measurements and handle the instruments and so on, and the girls are supposed to observe them. On the other hand, there are other topics like spinning and weaving. The girls are supposed to do it, and the boys are supposed to observe them. And not in a superficial way, but also sort of in a lovely, nice way, in sort of accompanying them with their emotions and say, well, thanks for, you do so nice spinning and weaving, and you do so nice landscape survey. And yeah, this really puzzled me, because nowhere I've ever I've never met a math teacher doing land survey and just the boys doing the measurements and the girls standing right next to it. So I thought, well, how did Steiner, what was his purpose to say that? So far I never got deep enough into Steiner's suggestions to understand this point. I never got a clue. And then one day it happened that yeah, you won't be able to see it, but this is a very old little tiny booklet. See, it's very it's thinner than my little finger here, and it's from 1926. Pictures of the very first Waldorf school, and in the very first Waldorf school, there was the teacher for technology, and he was an engineer, and so in his summer vacations, he had to learn spinning and weaving first of all by himself before he started to teach the students how to do spinning and weaving. And here in the pictures, and I try, it's very old, and I just hold it here right in front of my camera. And as you have seen, this is a class.
Can you do it again? And Laura
Yeah, I can. I will do it again right away. Just a second. Just a second. Maybe I do it like this. The name of the teacher was Alexander Strakosch, which might be also important to know. See, when you see this picture, you see in the front, there are girls spinning. But in the back, there are also boys somehow working with weaving. So even in 1925 or 26, it was not separated in the first Waldorf school. And here I have a picture here, landscape survey of the first Waldorf school. And in front, you can see two boys handling an instrument and a girl observing them. But in the back here, you can see also two girls handling an instrument and a boy or two boys observing them. So it seems that this suggestion of Steiner was never, maybe, I guess, it was never tried to introduce this in the teaching. And yeah, maybe if one of you has ever an idea to this lecture in GA 302, then just let me know. I'm really curious to find out what was his thinking, what did he think about it? And obviously, it even did not work in the very first Waldorf school. I found this interesting when Sven talked about sexes. I thought maybe this fits so nice to Sven's talk. And so since there were 5 minutes left, I thought maybe you're interested in learning about this also. Okay, thanks for everything. There's only 1 minute left, and usually Joost closes this series of lectures. So I pass over to you, Joost.
Thank you so much, Dirk. That was a very lively talk. Thank you so much. And I think there's much to think about, and especially for the last comments about this land survey. Thank you so much. Yes, we're looking forward to our next talk. This is David speaking to us about the enigma of creativity, innovative thinking in the Waldorf School. I'm very much looking forward to the talk next Tuesday, David. Happy you are with us right now. And yes, hope to see you all again. And I wish you a good day, a good night, good evening, wherever you are. And thank you so much again, Dirk, for this wonderful talk. And yeah, it was very much lively. Thank you so much.
One last remark. I just see in the chat there's someone asking for the school where farming goes on till grade 12, and I refer to Virashni, South Africa. And she said they do farming up to grade 12. Okay. From my side, good night. For others, good morning. Have a nice day. Or sleep well, yeah.